This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen, Shane Dale, and our friend Barrett Baker are going to join us right off the top of the show. Listen, football's in turmoil. We need to bring our best football guest on to give us some positivity, or at least break things down and figure out what's wrong and how things can be fixed. Also, our longtime buddy Matt Muehlebach going to join us in the second segment to talk some Wildcat basketball. So it's a big-time show. Two of our favorite guests coming on the same show. So it's great, Shane. Let's just get right to it. This is Buy or Sell, presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com. Use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, get $5 off. And once you do that, make sure to fill out the post-purchase survey and mention Wildcat Country, and we'll be very happy that you do that. All right, let's get right to it, Shane. We're not going to waste time. I'm going to start with you. After the way Arizona's played this season, it's fair to wonder if Brent Brennan just might not be the right guy at Arizona. Buy or sell?
I will buy that it's fair to wonder. I think that's completely fair all the time. And look, I even said before the season, even if they do well, if they have a great year, that we're still not sure because there's still a lot of Jed Fish's guys, which I give Brent Brennan complete credit for bringing back. But there's a lot. I don't want to have to repeat myself over and over because people are tired of hearing it, but a lot of change, a lot of different elements this year. It's fair to wonder. I think that, look, the results have not been good, especially on offense. We've had a lot of injuries. You could debate whether that's partly on the staff in terms of strength and conditioning or not. But I think that's been a big part of it. So is it fair? I'll just leave it at this because I want to get Barrett in here. I will buy that it is fair to wonder whether he's the right guy or not at this point.
All right, Barrett, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us a little bit earlier than usual on Wildcat Country. All right, is Brent Brennan, is it fair to admit that he may not be the guy long-term for Arizona football?
It would probably not surprise you that I'm coming in with an optimistic viewpoint on this, but that's just a hard sell for me. And I'll tell you why, if I can break it down a little bit. We've talked about this several times leading up to the season about, making the comparisons to 98 and 99 and what the roster was compared to the following year. And just the losses were far more impactful than what we had forecasted. And I think that that is exactly what's happened with this season. I read on the internet on a daily basis that, he inherited a Lamborghini and he turned it into this or that. But when you really take a dive into the roster, it's just not accurate. And I think if you go and you look at the offensive line, 3 out of 5 returners came back to the offensive line. And there's some studs on there. The 2 replacements are redshirt freshmen at the most important position, which is left tackle. And Rhino and Deuce are playing far earlier than they're supposed to. Is that going to have an impact? Because football is one of the trenches. So that's absolutely having an impact without Leaf at right guard and replacing Jacob at left tackle. You look at the running back position. 2 guys are in the NFL. Jonah Coleman's at Washington. But that's 3 certified studs that we lost from the tailback position. So as good as Quali has been and as good as Ricino has been, really starting to get some momentum, is that position better or worse than last year? It's worse. You look at the wide receiver position and you say you've got T-Mac, and everyone talks about T-Mac, and rightfully so. And he's on pace to have about the same numbers that he did last year. But Jay Cowing had 90 catches and 85 catches in his 2 seasons at the University of Arizona. And outside of T-Mac, Montana is on pace to have another 25 catch season roughly. Where is the productivity that anyone on the roster between Patterson and Raymelo Murphy and Malachi Riley, who's been hurt, do we have any production from the slot receiver in this offense? And that is the biggest no that you could ever find. And then finish it up with the tight end position when you are taking Tanner McLaughlin, that I think people don't understand that he is the all-time leading receptions tight end at the University of Arizona, more than anybody else. And are we getting the productivity from Key Burnett and Olsen that matched what Tanner did over 2 seasons that he was here? And that's a no. So I say all of that, that the only position that is the same as last year is Noah, and it's not clicking like it did last year. So when you go 0 for 4 with the amount of talent on offense, there are going to be struggles, and they've identified those struggles. Now it's just a matter of trying to work through that. So the defense, he gets all the credit in the world for hiring Dwayne Aquina, and he has done a phenomenal job there. But it's still, when we look at the talent on the roster, it is not a Lamborghini. And if we say that it's a Lamborghini and he inherited a Lamborghini, we're not being accurate. It's a Lamborghini's body with different tires and a different engine that aren't as good.
And I think that's a great point, Barrett. I also think it's fair. And I mean, my position has changed over what I've seen the last 3 weeks. I was super excited. This team looked to be going in the right direction. That win over Utah now, they stink. Utah's not very good. So that win doesn't hold as much value. And then you saw the loss to Texas Tech. Well, Texas Tech gets blown out at home by Baylor. I know this conference is all over the place, but the fact that Arizona's offense, minus Rhino, has stayed mostly healthy and has regressed so badly makes you wonder. With that said, you're not going to replace Brent Brennan right away. That talk is foolish. It's not going to happen. I think anything before 2 years, if we're having this discussion next year at Game 6, Game 7, yeah, I think that's fair. We can wonder at the end of the year. Right now, the buyout is just too much. I don't think that is a legitimate conversation. But let me ask you this, and Barrett, I'll start with you. Do you think the fan base, in a way, has been poisoned by certain media members who have an agenda? Because they're not, and I've seen this, I'm not singling out anybody, I want to say that, but they don't have the access to the program that they once had because Brent closed it. So first of all, it's kind of a two-part question. Is Brent closing it, is that a problem in your opinion? And two, the media agenda, do you think they're kind of taking it out and poisoning the fan base?
Well, I guess it's a challenging thing to even say that he closed it, because have they been as open when it comes to the marketing and the things that have changed with a lot of turnover, starting with the athletic director? But what does that mean that they closed off the team? Because he still does the radio show, he still does the press conferences, and so to what degree did he close it? And there's probably, go ahead.
What he did, yeah, the media cannot watch practice.
Gotcha.
And there's no reporting as to, we don't know who's going to play. You have to show up to the games. You don't know. We didn't know Kean Burnett was going to be out, for example. Mm-hmm. So that's where I have a problem. I've heard they put curtains on the weight room, so when you walk by the north end zone on the bottom level, you can't look in like you used to be able to. Those are some examples.
And I think those are fair. And I guess the counter to that is that the head coach is simply and 100% dedicated to the 105 guys that are in that locker room. And if it doesn't have an impact on those 105, then I don't necessarily think it's something that he gives a lot of thought to. Now, when it's pointed out that, Tucson is a city that will really get behind you if you go all in on it and try to build that goodwill, then, there's certainly a difference there. But I don't think that he's so obtuse that he's not willing to change things. And I think that they already did that. And I think that you saw that this week, where they have already announced that Rhino was out for the season. And that Gunner was out for the season. So those are fixable things. But again, curtains in a weight room for probably 0.5% of the Tucson population, it doesn't affect the 105 guys in the locker room. And that's where his focus is. So I think that's the first part of that. The second part of it, it's almost treasonous to me. Some of the things that we read about and that we see on the internet. And I will tell you candidly, I'm not even on it after the games, because it's just so emotional. And you said you're not going to make it personally. I will. When Jason Shear takes to X with his however many followers, and he says that it's disingenuous for Brent Brennan to talk about injuries when it comes to the offense. What is more disingenuous, to tweet that or to recognize that Rhino missed time, that Leif Magnuson has missed time, that Ray Mello Murphy has missed time, that Malachi Riley has been out, that Keon Burnett has missed time, that Josh Baker missed a game, that Wendell Moe missed time. So when I add up the fact that there's 5 or 6, including the fact that we don't even have our top running back, because of something with the NCAA, and you have the audacity to type on X that it's disingenuous to talk about injuries, that is disingenuous. And so when you have people that are taking pot shots about meeting with boosters or the curtains or whatever all those things are, and you have people that aren't necessarily so hardcore, and yet they heard it from somebody, and then they heard it from somebody, and it starts getting repeated, and it doesn't matter whether it's true or false, it then just builds up momentum. And I think it's almost just the world that we live in. But I have no problem with facts. That's not factual. And when you start doing things of that nature, and I will tell you candidly, I had a conversation with somebody on the team yesterday, and I'm not going to say who it was, but they've been around. We'll just say that. And we talked about it, and it's basically that is all outside noise that has no impact on the locker room. And I said, do you have faith in this staff? And he said, 100%. So I am going to listen to that person. And I don't care what I read about from somebody on Twitter or, whatever message board that literally doesn't know anything about what they heard, besides it's just an assumption. So I know that's passionate. I know it's hardcore, but it does irritate me, because when you do go to X and you see one person that actually types something positive, and then one of our recruits, T. Shelton, retweets that with the bear down, are you telling me that it does?
That was my buddy that typed that. My buddy Steve typed that. So good for you.
So
Steve,
thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. And that shows you that it does have an impact. So when you have all these people that, pardon my language, are crapping all over the staff that's been here for 7 games, that hasn't even had the chance to put their own recruiting staff together or recruiting class together, don't complain about the results then when people start jumping ship, because you are part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Wow. Shane, I'm just going to ask you to respond to what Barrett said just now, because that was passion right there, and I appreciate it.
Well, and this is why we have Barrett and other people in the know on, because Barrett is, well, first of all, he's played the game, and so it's always good to talk to people who actually play the game. I never have, outside of outside of Madden or NCAA, but beyond that, I mean, Barrett's got connections. I mean, obviously, Barrett knows Brent well, and so it's personal for him on that level. But he also knows what Brent's capable of, and he talks to the alumni, he talks to some of the players, and so I definitely appreciate and I'm more receptive to that kind of comment than I am for someone who's, and there are people who will post things beneficial to them. They'll kind of dip their toe in the water and see which way should I go, and they'll go that direction. And it's more difficult to do the opposite. It's more difficult to have a counter opinion, especially when you're counting on people to listen or watch or subscribe or visit your sponsors' websites. It's more difficult to go against the grain. And I feel like we shouldn't be afraid to do it. We need to believe it, first of all, not just be provocateurs. But everything Barrett's saying, I mean, I agree with in terms of the results haven't been what they were. I think I'm fine with people questioning whether Brent Brennan's the right guy. I think that's perfectly legitimate. There are a lot of different schools right now, football programs going through the same thing. Is this guy, including Arizona's opponent on Saturday, okay, is he the right guy? So that's fine. And the people can say what they want, but I put more stock into what Barrett has to say and what some of our other guests in the know have to say than random people and even certain people in the press.
All right. Listen, I appreciate what both of you said. Let me just once again make it clear, if you're listening to this podcast, Shane and I do it for fun. We're grateful to have sponsors in Ice Shaker and Harrah's Auction Casino, but we do this for fun. We do this because we're passionate fans. We're not employed by the university. We never will be employed by the university. We are doing this because it is, as I have said over and over on this program, a way of therapy for us, especially when things are not good, to talk about it like this. And when things are great, we celebrate it together. And we appreciate all of you that listen. You don't have to agree with everything we say, and we don't expect you to, and vice versa. I just think that the vitriol that is out there is unnecessary. Give the guys a chance. Am I happy with what I'm seeing? Absolutely not. Can I 100% tell you today that Brent Brennan is the best coach for the future of Arizona, like I thought I had said in the past? No, I can't. That's an honest. I think he is, but I don't know, like I said I knew weeks ago. So yeah, I flip-flopped there, but the results on the field have spoken for themselves. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Let's talk about the onside kick to start Saturday's game, guys. Shane, I'm going to start with you on this one. Buy or sell? The onside kick on Saturday was a foolish coaching move. Buy or sell?
Well, if you're just going by the result, then yes, I'll buy it. But I'll sell it. It was a foolish move. They're trying to energize the team a little bit. And if I'll tell you what, if they had recovered that, I'm not saying they would have gone out and won the game, but I think in every game there's a couple of moments that can completely turn the tide. And there wasn't a bad attempt. Nope. Arizona almost got its hands on. And if that had worked and Arizona had gone down and scored, then it might be a different game. I'm not saying that it would have been. I'm fine with shaking things up because this team needs to be shook up in one way or the other. And it was a try. It didn't work. But I'll buy the fact that it didn't work, obviously, but I'll sell the idea that it was foolish because this team needs some sort of jolt, and they tried to get it that way, and it didn't work out.
Barrett, the onside kick. Watching it, I'm like, oh, it's genius. Now, Jackson Holman, I wish he had dove on it. I didn't see the replay of how far the ball had gone.
It was close.
I think for me, you take a shot, you dive on it, or you surround it and he just kind of froze. But you have to remember, and then I'll let you respond to it, Barrett. It was 3rd and 15 after a sack. Arizona had a chance to get off the field with no points given up, and they gave up a 46-yard pass. So the onside kick to me was not foolish because the defense made a bad play, and it was just the story of the whole game. They just couldn't get off the field in 3rd down. Your thoughts on the onside kick, Barrett?
Well, I think you go to the NFL and you look at Dan Campbell with the Lions, and to his own fan base, he is a genius, and he's also the most maddening guy on the planet because he does more trick plays than any NFL coach I've ever seen in my life. And when they work, you're a genius, and when they don't, you're a fool. And I would just say that they didn't just whimsically decide to do the onside kick. That is something that was scouted, and they saw something on film, and they knew going into it. And so when you take the field and you have that trick play, the onside kick called, if they line up in anything that is different than what you scouted, then you kill it and you kick it deep. They obviously liked what they saw. It was the most perfect kick you could possibly have, and the ball went outside of the Colorado defender. And for whatever reason, and it's just unfortunate, Jackson hesitated. And that was there for the taking. Yeah. And you see the difference if you go back and watch the replay. And this is what I always tell people, it's a game of execution. You watch the Colorado defender attack the ball, and you watch Jackson watch the ball. And it's just a difference. And the challenge with an onside kick is obviously if you catch it before 10 yards offensively, then it's a penalty and it all for naught. So you have to wait for it to get to 10. But it's clearly at 11 when the Colorado guy aggressively jumps on it. But again, if it worked, he would have been genius for trying something different. So to me, it's a sell because it's worth it. To your point, Eric, you get a stop on 1st down, you get the sack on 2nd down, it's 3rd and 15. The crowd's going crazy at that point in time. And unfortunately, again, is that an excuse or is it a reason? Genesis is playing a different position in this particular game than he did any other time for the most part for the course of the season. And Jack Luttrell's in at free safety for the first time. And Genesis, truth be told, he's probably a little bit more effective when he's 15 yards deep. In that particular alignment, he's 7 yards deep on a burner from Colorado. Got him on the inside move, 46-yard post later. It led to bad things. But it's just it's not desperation, but they saw something, they took a chance on it, and it didn't work.
All right. We're going to condense this first segment because I want to leave time to talk, make picks in the last segment and kind of go in depth on Arizona. So I'll go one more question here. There is no hope for the rest of the season. Shane, start with you. Buy or sell?
We'll sell that. Am I going to pick them to win a lot more games at this point? No, I'm not. But I think there's a difference between that and hope. I mean, stranger things have happened in terms of turning things around. I think the injuries are the biggest thing right now. Like Barrett said, that Arizona was missing more pieces to start the season than maybe we talked about. And a lot of those were guys who left or either didn't have the option to return or left even before Jed did. So that's part of it. But no, I think there's still hope. I don't want this to be one of the seasons where, we salvage the season with a big win over ASU, especially because ASU is playing pretty well right now, their quarterback situation notwithstanding. But I think there's a chance for a couple more wins in there. At this point, I would not pick them to get to a bowl game. But I think that at this point, our expectations change week to week in football. Every game, our expectations change one way or the other. And if Arizona can finish the season winning, say, 2 out of 3, including the Territorial Cup, then a lot of people are going to be like, okay, I'm still not crazy about this Brennan guy, but maybe he can get things going. So there's always hope. At this point, I'm not going to pick him to win many more games, but depending on how this week goes, that could change.
All right, Barrett, I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to repeat the question again, or the statement. There is no hope for Arizona football in 2024. Buy or sell?
I'll sell that one. I think Brian Peterson posted or tweeted something today that when you look at the record of the opponents that we've played so far compared to the record moving forward, I think the remaining record is like 17-18 of our opponents. And so there is hope there. I think in talking to the gentleman that is on the team, as long as the locker room has not fractured, and they have not, and they still believe, then that is most important to me. But I would say that the Texas Tech game was extremely disappointing because we were better than them. We just didn't win the game. Yeah. The Colorado game was really the first time for me that it didn't work. And defensively, obviously the injuries are, I've never seen something like this. Offensively, 3 and out to start the game. Second series, beautiful drive, go down and get 7. Third series, just marching right down the field, even though it was 21-7. Had a beautiful drive going, and we get all the way down there on a 3rd and 1, and we get sacked on the bootleg, missed the field goal. So if you would have told me that we would have had 10 points after our first 2 series against Colorado, I'd have been feeling really, really good. But it was similar to Kansas State and similar to BYU, that the second half offense, it just looked bad. And I think in listening to Coach Atkins today at the press conference, when they are behind the chains and they're not having first down efficiency, then it is just not it's not leading to good things for the offense, especially when you have Rhino that gets hurt and Wooten comes in, and we don't have to really say too much about that. It was horrible, a disaster, and they've got to figure out ways to mask that. And it sounds like obviously moving him to right tackle and moving Jonah over, but now that's the 3rd position that Jonah's played, right? Right guard, right tackle, left tackle. So he's showing that he can do it at the next level, but there's going to be some challenges. You have to win against the Mountaineers, period. And when you do that, now all of a sudden, does it infuse something in the locker room? And then you go to UCF, winnable game. You go to Houston, must win. You go to TCU, they barely beat Utah, and then we finish. So call me crazy, and you're welcome to do that, and a lot of people will. But what did they do at San Jose State last year? I think they won 6 in a row to finish the season. So can it happen? It absolutely can, and I believe that it will.
Okay, I'm gonna sell it because a win this weekend would give us a legitimate hope of a bowl game heading into November and a potential of a winning season. You lose this weekend, then I would go back and I'd buy the heck out of the statement and say the season's lost. I wish we could just fold up shop and on to next year, on to the offseason. Because that's what I'm curious. I mean, at this point, the offensive staff probably needs to go bye-bye. Outside of the Rhino injury, and obviously, Barrett, you discussed the lack of, playmakers, but I mean, we need an overhaul from scheme to players. It's an absolute mess. Defensively, I mean, when you lose Manu and Maldonado and Stukes and, other guys on top of what they already lost in the offseason, Akina's doing the best he can. But offensively, there is no excuse to be scoring 7 points against Colorado. There's none. It's a disgrace to watch them offensively. If I was head coach, I'm firing anybody and everybody if I could, because it's not working. Clearly, if I'm Brent, I'm calling plays because it's not working. Matt Atkins is not working. Dino not working. Then take it over and say, I'm going to call my own plays. You got to do something, right? Just throwing that out there. All right. We're going to bring on Matt Muehlebach next, and then we're going to make picks in the 3rd segment. But let me tell you a little bit about Harrah's Auction Casino. Bear down, Wildcat fans, because it's time to spin to win up to $6,000 at Harrah's Auction Casino. It's easy. Just sign up for Caesars Rewards, play your favorite slots, and earn entries to spin the wheel for your chance to win up to $6,000 in free slot play. What's even better, you'll get $10 in free slot play just for signing up. And the more you play, the more entries you'll receive. So get ready to spin to win only at Harrah's Auction Casino. Play for all. Coming up next, it's Matt Muehlebach, and then we're bringing Barrett back for the third segment here on Wildcat Country.
When you're on the golf course and it's 100 degrees outside, you know what's great? The ice shaker, which keeps your water cold.
You heard the man. Get your custom Arizona Wildcats ice shaker now at iceshaker.com.
Shane, our buddy Matt Muehlebach, Mr. Triple Double, is back with us for the first time since March, April, something like that. And you know, it's funny because basketball is here. We need some optimism on this program. We brought on the perfect person to do it. He also happened to call last night's game. Arizona won a bunch, Eastern New Mexico, not so much, 117-54. Matt, first of all, glad to have you back on. Let's start with what you saw last night in the front court for Arizona. I know who they were playing. Awaka, Townsend, Vesar. Wow.
Yeah. Big, physical, tough, and more skilled than I thought, especially Townsend. I didn't see the 3-pointers coming. I think I don't have my sheet in front of me, but I think he shot, I don't know, 30-some threes last year or something like that. And to go 4 or 5 in his first opening night at McHale. I know exhibition, as you said, but I thought he looked great. I said it on air. I thought he was more athletic than I maybe in my mind pictured. Because he is a big guy too. He's strong. But he looked impressive. I thought Vesar just I've always thought for any player, being able to sit and just watch, for a month or 2 months, but give him a full year. It's like a redshirt year, right? I think it helped him a ton, and you could see it. And then Awaka, oh my gosh, that was he is I think he was. I got to give the coaching staff a lot of credit for their general manager moves. Not they're great coaches, as we know, but that's the perfect player to come in and get ready for the Big 12.
Yeah, Matt. And first of all, I don't want you to think we're just talking to you because it's basketball season again. We love chatting with you all the time.
You want to come talk football with us, by all means.
Well, we're trying. Well, the reason you're on with us right now is so we don't have to talk about football for a while. We appreciate the time as always. Regarding Awaka, I was going to ask you anyway. You look at Christian Coloco and Umar Ballo at Arizona, and just their development under Tommy Lloyd and his staff. Does that give you more hope that Awaka could take that step at Arizona as well?
Definitely. It was interesting. Tommy was super cool to me. He let me. I had my buddy Matt Othick in town. Old playing mate was in town for homecoming. Matt is hilarious. He came in with his brother Trent and some other guys we had in town. And anyway, he invited us to film session on Saturday morning. And we were in there, and it was super cool to kind of get a behind the scenes look. And it had some really interesting discussions with Awaka, and talking about, there were some things that he was pointing out. You could already see him, to your point, Shane, coaching him up, right? It's not just, hey, we want you to come in here and bang and, get 8 rebounds or 10 rebounds in 22 minutes. And okay, we'll talk to you at the end of the year. He was really coaching him up. He was talking about different things that he had to do, and he was getting on him a little bit. And, Awaka plays as hard as anybody in probably the country. But it was cool to see. And I'm with you. I think all, and for whatever reason, I know there's a few reasons, but he loves coaching big guys. He loves developing big guys. And usually I think one of the reasons is there's more to develop, right? They're bigger. Their game comes a little bit later sometimes than guards. Guards are grown up. We all grow up dribbling the ball and trying to make moves and shoot 3-pointers. Big guys have, in a weird way, because it's a lot of strength and just using your size and so much, but there's so much that goes on in the footwork and the positioning and ducking in, and how do you, is your guy in your left shoulder, right shoulder, how do you, where do you move from there? And I actually saw a film session with him and Ballo last year. It was tremendous, to see, and some of it was almost counterintuitive to me, some of the teaching that he had, incredibly detailed, incredibly specific. And I think a great observation, Shane, that you're gonna see Awaka and those guys, I think, even improve more.
Yeah, I'm excited for that as well. And by the way, I do remember you and Matt Offick tearing it up from 3-point range back in the day for Arizona. So I remember
Yeah.
that. I remember the name as well. Looking at this team as a whole, Matt, just from, I mean, limited sample size, obviously, but we got the preseason or the exhibition game rather. I know you've seen them in practice. What's maybe an area where you think this team might be stronger than it was last season, and an area where, in the corporate world, we say there are maybe opportunities.
Well, just to use that word, stronger. They look stronger to me. Like it definitely looks, and Awaka is a great example, but they just look stronger. Like they just. I saw Caleb Love early before the season started. I was talking to him, and the first words out of his mouth were defense and toughness. Those were the first two words, and he looks a little just. It's. I always laugh every year. Every football season, the team is 10 pounds heavier and, just faster, stronger, whatever, like, from what they did. And it's kind of a running joke, but, a lot of times that happens, right? But it seems to me like they're kind of built a little differently already. I think opportunities, the one thing that just on paper is they have new point guard who's getting the keys for the first time. I think that's a big deal. The starting three guards, none of them have played together like as starters. The big man, it's just they're so new from a chemistry standpoint. So I think we could see some, a team that, and Tommy's teams are a little bit like Lutz, where they've always been really good early. Like that's not to say they've been good late either, but they're good. Like he gets them good early, and but I think it could be a team that could develop a lot and become a lot better in January, February.
All right, Matt. I'll give you an early tester on the show. Over under 8.5 regular season losses for Arizona. What would you set the number at?
8.5 to the Big 12. You're talking.
I'm talking between non-conference up until the Big 12 tournament. That doesn't count, and the NCAA tournament.
8.5 losses.
Yeah,
you said. That's a good number. You're a good handicapper.
Thank you.
He is the people's capper. Yes.
I'd probably elect the under. I think I would. I'd probably say the under, and I'm looking at their. They have a pretty hard non-conference though. That at Wisconsin, the crazy part is they beat Wisconsin by 30-something last year. Like that's going to be a way different game, as we know, right? On the road there, Duke at home, but Duke at home, like we've had. Arizona has had some good home games over the years. Duke at home with Cooper Flag, that's on, like, again, using that term on paper, God, that's one of the top 5 I can think of in the last 10, 15 years. Maybe the best one.
Yeah.
So what do you got? What do you guys have 8.5 over under?
I would put it right around 9 to 10 regular season losses. Shane, what do you think?
I think we agreed on that. We had the same question last week, except I think you put it at 7.5. But yeah, I think so. And I don't think that's I mentioned, Matt, I think this team could lose 10 games and still be a 2 or 3 seed in the tournament because of the quality of competition they're going to play. And you remember in 97, Arizona finished tied for 4th in the Pac-10, and they were a 4 seed and won the whole thing because they had that level of competition back then.
No, you're totally right. Battle tested, right, is the thing I always think of. And I always think of my teams back in the day, like we got battle tested a lot, especially in the non-con. Luke played crazy schedules.
Yeah.
Luke, you always had 1 or 2 teams in the pack that was as good as anyone in the country, but it's the everyday grind. That's what I think they're going to get out of that conference. Now, I will say this. I think I'd have to look at the record. I consider BYU like a really good team, solid team. They've been a good, solid team. They were really good last year, I think, in the Big 12 in their first year. So they might surprise people with their record in that league. And I don't get me wrong, I'm not disrespecting the league. I think the league's phenomenal. And we were talking before we got on this podcast about the Mountain West and what good home and away venues they have. And, the Big 12 is the same, but even better teams. And so, but I think Arizona might surprise people in their conference play.
Well, you look at the football version of the Big 12, Matt, and everybody that Shane and I did these previews of these teams are going to be good. Utah, top of the conference, stinks. Oklahoma State, 0-4. Kansas, we thought they'd be up there, 2-5. Arizona, we thought they'd be up there, 3-4. So you just don't know. And basketball, a little bit easier to predict, I feel like, but there's always going to be one team that jumps up, another team that jumps back. So Tommy Lloyd, when I saw him speak in the offseason, said, I have to do a better job of coaching. Based on talking to him, what do you think Tommy Lloyd has learned from Arizona's last 3 years of being a little bit disappointing in the tournament, more than a little bit, let's just say?
Well, I think, he's really good at, I used the word last night in the game, tinkering, in the off season, he's really good at like thinking about where do I get better? How do I get better? And that's a great skill. How many coaches, year after year, they roll the ball out and say, this is my system. This is what we do. And you guys, I don't care if you guys can't do this, you're going to learn to do it, and he doesn't do that. He has a system. He has a, if you will, like an architecture of what he likes to do and what he wants to do, but he's really good at kind of figuring the little things out that he can switch. If just the practices I've been to and the first game and so forth, he is holding them accountable to me with their energy and effort more than I've seen maybe in the first few years. And that's not, I'm nitpicking little things, but he's on them about energy and effort and every play and every possession. And I think it's the age old, just keep stacking. I remember Steve Kerr in a huddle one time. I think it was the Western Conference Finals. He was just saying, I think it was the Kings a couple years ago where they won in Game 7. And he's like, look, just stack possession after possession after possession for 48 minutes, and we're going to be there. We will. And I think that's what that kind of like process, right? Stacking. He's like, let's forget, like not forget, but there's a lot of technique and there's a lot of strategy that goes in, especially defense. But if you play hard, who cares? Like if you're on the wrong shoulder, if I'm moving my hips wrong, blah, 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 blah. Like if you just play harder than anyone, you're going to make up for about 80-90% of it. And I think that's one area where I feel like he's really honed in on.
Along those lines, Matt, I was trying to think because I feel like one of the guys that Arizona's going to miss most this season is Pelle Larsson, especially in late game situations, because he was clutch on defense, coming up with big free throws late in games. Other than Caleb Love, who do you think might fill that role, that late game role, clutch role for Arizona this season?
Gosh, that's a good one. Because there's kind of no one really like him, right? That fits that. It could be Del Orso. Del Orso is a really high IQ guy. He's a thinker. Even though he scored like crazy at Campbell, he's a really thoughtful person. I was talking to him before the game, and I asked him what his secret weapon is. He didn't even start with shooting. He's just like my IQ. Like I know how to play the game. And he's a guy that I could see. He's a different player than Pelle, right? Totally different physically. But he seems to kind of play at his own pace. He's got his own sort of feel. Australian kid, skilled. So I think he could be part of that. I think it's going to be interesting. Shane, you asked me, and now I'm thinking about like the opportunities, right? You lose Pelle, who's a good shooter. He was he became a better shooter his last year. He struggled a little bit his first couple years at Arizona, but they have some unproven shooters on the perimeter. Now Del Orso's been proven; he's going to come off the bench, but we know KJ. I think he's a really good chance at being a pro, and if he does the things I think he'll do, but he's an unproven shooter. I think he can shoot. Jaden Bradley's an unproven shooter. Carter Bryant, as good as that jumper he took from three looked last night, he's unproven to this point. Those things may go out the window by game 2, But I think that's an area will be interesting to see what kind of a shooting team they become. But I think they're going to get a lot of teams on their heels and get them to the rim.
Yeah, I'm excited about Del Orso for the reason you mentioned as well. Last question for you, Matt. Going back to the Arizona schedule, going back to the tournament last year, I think we all agree Arizona probably should have beaten Clemson in the Sweet 16, but
Yeah.
I think Clemson was probably the best team Arizona had played in a couple months at that point. The fact that Arizona is going to get, tough games week after week in the Big 12. They finished the season at Kansas, at Iowa State, and they got the Big 12 tournament. Do you think that's any sort of advantage going into the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, for sure. Because I think what it'll do is help them just learn how to win, and I go back to, Caleb Love against Utah. I did that game up in Salt Lake City, and I think we even talked about it on one of your shows that, he may have taken some late game shot clocks from 30 whatever feet that if he looks back, and he did look back this summer and said, those are some things I can change. Now if I have it and it's there or I have to take it, I'm going to take it, right? He's an alpha. He'll have no problem doing that. But I think he learned some things about, hey, maybe I can get to the rim. Maybe I can get to the lane, make something happen. And I think if you go on the road and you have a couple of those games, now they beat Utah in that game, but let's say you lose that game at Iowa State and you lose the next game at Baylor and you lose, like you're going to say, okay, what do I got to figure out? It's a tougher conference. And I think losing will actually teach them what to do. And I will say this, like I miss Ballo. Like I think Ballo was a tremendous, tremendous player, tremendous human being. And I wish him nothing but the best. But, that game, as good as he was at the end of the game, the two areas that he struggled with, obviously, struggled shooting free throws. He didn't shoot them well that game. And he struggled on pick and rolls, and he struggled defensively in late game situations. What I like about this team is they seem a little more mix and match. Like you could put Carter Bryant at the 5, you could put Awaka at the 5, you could put, Trey Townsend at the 5. I think it's a deeper team than we've seen the last 2 years. And you go back to that Princeton game where they lost. Obviously, I don't want to talk about that very much, but I think the lack of depth hurt them in that game. Kirk Risa was hurt. Someone else was hurt in that game. I can't remember who it was. It may have been Ballo. Or one of the big guys I think was hurt. Played hurt. And I think they're deeper this year. So if things like that happen, if they get banged up, they can go to the bench and mix and match some lineups a little differently.
Yeah, but do you think this team is almost too deep for its own? I know this sounds weird. They have too many players, and Mo Krivas didn't even play last night. How does Tommy Lloyd play 10, 11 guys when he's used to playing 7 or 8?
It's a great point. We always talked about, Sean Miller almost recruiting too good and not recruiting role players, right? There's all these McDonald's All-Americans everywhere. Who's going to be the guy that gets the Pella Larson rebound, as Shane was talking about? Who's the guy that just, gets sets a screen when you need to set a screen? And I was on when I look back, high school, college, I was on a couple amazing teams. All of them seemed like they were really good. But what the differentiator in every of the 2 best teams I was ever on they were great teams. They were great, like unselfish people and people. Like I remember my freshman year in '88, we had guys that wanted to play. And everybody, we always go back to the Gumbies if people remember that. The Gumbies nobody wanted to be a Gumby, but we created that to be good teammates because it was kind of fun and let's have some fun with it. And so where this team ends up, the destination of this team is probably going to be what you just said, Eric, which is, can guys be willing to take a lesser role or not even play for that matter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and take a guy like Carter Bryant. On paper right now, he's probably the highest draft pick on the entire team. He's coming off the bench right now. Like you got to check your ego, and he looked fine last night. He didn't look like he had any problem doing it. He's going to play a ton because he's really good, but man, it's that kind of, that'll separate this team from being one of the all-time, just a tremendous, tremendous team than maybe a team that won't reach their peak.
Fair enough. Last one for you. Where are we going to see you this year?
Well, I've got early on. I've got some ESPN Plus games like I did last night. I've already got a few, and I think I'll have some more Pac-2 games, or even potentially some stuff that the Pac's doing with the West Coast Conference and Fox and FS1. I'm actually waiting on my FS1 schedule, but I was good to see. I'm actually a colleague now with Tom Brady, so we both are Fox, employees, if you will. Little different, probably a little different, rate per game.
Pay structure,
But
yeah.
Tom Brady never had a triple double, so
true.
as far as we know.
That's true. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've really enjoyed when I've had some, as you guys know, I probably had 4 or 5 FS1 games last week. Last year. I actually did this summer. I was super fortunate to work with the TBT tournament. It's called the basketball tournament. They've had that for 10 or 11 years. It's where you win $1 million to the winner. And you can just we could throw a team together and call us whatever, Arizona.
I think Kyle Fogg won that a couple of years ago, didn't he?
He won it at least twice, maybe even 3 times. I think he was the MVP once or twice.
Yeah.
And that was with FS1. I really love working with those guys. It's a really cool network. I've had some awesome experience with the announcers, with the crews, the producers, and they've been really good to me. So I'm excited to work with those guys. I've done games with guys like Kevin Burkhardt, who's amazing, who's now done Super Bowls, and he does all the World Series stuff at the booth, and it's really cool and innovative. So I'm excited to work with him.
Matt, always glad to have you on. Great to catch up with you. I'm sure we'll be bugging you plenty during the season, but it's great to talk with you. Great insight. Perfect timing after calling the game last night, and really excited. Thanks for breaking it down for us as always.
Appreciate it, fellas. Good stuff.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
All right, great to talk with Matt Muehlebach. What a show, Shane. Great job putting this one together. But it's time to bring Barrett back. He's going to make some picks with us, as per usual. Now, Shane, one guy on the Twitter, or on the X, bashed you for being in last place, but you're catching up. I had a nice 6-point week. I had 3. Our guest, Blair, had 4. So now I have 37 points. The guests have 35, and you have 34. Let's start with the upset special. Shane, what are you rolling with this week?
Well, I did pretty well last week, but we don't have to talk about my upset special pick last week. We'll talk about this week. Give me Oklahoma State as a 7-point underdog at Baylor. I think the Cowboys righted the ship. Despite the loss at BYU, it's a game they should have won. They looked a lot better. Baylor is about as average a power program as there is, so I'm going to take OK State to finally get a win in the Big 12.
Barrett, your upset special is?
I apologize because I'm blanking on the opponent, but I'm going with Florida State. I think they, being 1-6 and basically left for dead, at some point something's got to click there, and maybe Norvell can salvage at least a second win.
He's going Florida State plus 20.5 at Miami. Just trying to get that point if they cover, but Miami undefeated. So okay, fair enough. I don't hate that pick. How about we got 5 ranked versus ranked matchups, so we'll go through those, throw in a couple of Big 12s here, and then get to Arizona. Notre Dame minus 13 against Navy. Barrett, we'll start with you. Who do you like?
I love Newberry. I love what Navy is doing. But at the end of the day, I think that Cinderella might lose the glass slipper on this one. And I hate to say that because I truly do appreciate, a great story. But I think Notre Dame is just, when you look at the athletes on both sides, I think they'll take it.
Shane.
Well, first of all, Eric, did you give us your upset special?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. I totally forgot. I'm going Oregon State plus 9.5 against Cal. I got so excited to move on to this game. Oregon State plus 9.5 at Cal. Battle of old Pac-12 teams. I think Oregon State keeps it close. Possibly could pull the upset. Cal lost 4 in a row. So thank you for reminding me. All right.
No worries. All right. Notre Dame Navy.
Yeah.
I like Notre Dame's defense to hold Navy to 14 points or less, but I don't know if they're going to get enough separation to cover that spread, and Navy's at home. So give me Notre Dame to win, but probably more into 7 to 10 point range.
Games in the Meadowlands, actually. Not necessarily a home game, but close. Not all that far from Annapolis. I think Notre Dame's going to win this game by 13, right on the dot. I'm going to take Notre Dame just based on that, but I think it's going to be higher scoring. I'll say that. All right, let's go Illinois at Oregon minus 21.5. Shane, what do you think?
Ooh, you listed minus 25 earlier. I have to no. I'm going to stick with it. I think Illinois is the real deal after beating Michigan. They're not a CFP contender, but certainly deserving of a top 25 ranking. I think Oregon wins, but I don't think I'm going to take them to win by. I had to originally said 25, 21.5. I'll say Illinois keeps it within 3 touchdowns.
All right, Barrett, how about you?
Oregon with the win. I think they have an emotional letdown after a huge win against Ohio State, and Illinois is going to be physical. So Oregon win, much closer than 21 points though.
The line, and I'm taking Illinois as well. I think this line is going to be very close to the 21.5, but I'm going Illinois plus 21.5. How about BYU at UCF? BYU was favored earlier in the week. Now UCF is a 1.5 point favorite. I like BYU to win the game outright. I do not trust UCF, even with Arizona playing them next week. How about you, Barrett?
They're explosive. They've got a great offense when it comes to UCF, but I think BYU, there's just something that's in their destiny right now. Great finish to last week's game, and I think they carry that forward.
Shane.
Yeah, I buy with the BYU is legit, but I think they're just due for a loss. They almost had one against OK State, and UCF is better than they've showed at times. They just came off a very close loss at Iowa State, so give me the Knights to hand BYU their first loss of the season.
All right, a couple of SEC ones we'll go through fairly quickly. Missouri at Alabama, who is favored by 13.5. Shane.
I'm going to take Alabama with the points. Both teams are struggling, but Alabama is still a top 25 caliber team, and Missouri isn't at the moment. So I'm going to take Bama to win by at least 2 touchdowns.
Barrett.
Bama to win, but I think that Missouri, again, with the wide receiver that they've got, a couple of offensive weapons, they'll keep it closer.
I think this one's around a 10-point game. I'll take Missouri plus the points as well. Vanderbilt's ranked 25th. We got to include this in here. Texas minus 18.5 at Vanderbilt. I think this one's going to be close to the line. I'm going Vandy. How about you, Shane?
Yeah, when's the last time a top 25 team was this big an underdog at home? I get it, and I don't think it's an unreasonable line, but I think Vandy finds a way to cover, even though I certainly won't pick them to win outright against a Texas team that's going to come in with a head of steam after that loss to Georgia. So give me Texas to win, Vandy to cover.
Barrett.
I'll copy that. I mean, Vanderbilt has already had a huge upset at home against Alabama. I think Lee is a great coach, and I think they're going to keep it probably within about 13 to 17. But I do think that Bama will win. Sorry.
Bama would, that Texas will win. Yeah, I agree.
Texas will win,
we're all going to take Vanderbilt. I think Texas still a little bit of a hangover from that game last week. I was glad I got Georgia right there. Texas probably wins the game 14 to 17 in that ballpark. How about LSU at Texas A&M? The Aggies are favored by 2.5. I like them to win the game. I can tell you that on my Wednesday Sportsline show, there will be differences. Barrett, how about you?
Two programs that I probably just despise more than anything besides ASU. So I'll just stick with Texas A&M with the win and covering the spread.
Shane.
Yeah, 2 teams I don't really bias as CFP contenders, but who could both make the top 12. Contrasting styles on offense. LSU moves the ball through the air. A&M moves on the ground. I think it's a pretty even matchup, but simple for me. A&M's at home. I think they get the win and they cover.
Well, interesting. Okay, all right, we agree there. And then finally, Arizona somehow is a 3-point favorite at home against West Virginia. West Virginia has injuries. West Virginia has problems. They are not the team that we expected at the beginning of the year. So now, who wins this battle of 3 and 4, teams that are falling below expectations? I'm going to go first on this one. After what I've seen from Arizona, you guys know I'm a fan. I will be at the game. I'm a diehard. West Virginia 30, Arizona 17. I haven't seen anything that shows me that Arizona's going to win this game. Barrett, you're up next.
I can't betray it. The emotions in the heart are too much. So at some point we have to break through. This is the time that we do it. So I think that we're somehow going to score 27 points and we'll give up 16.
Wow. 27-16 Arizona. Interesting. All right, Shane, it's on to you. I think I know where you're going, but
I wish you had ended with Barrett so we could end with some hope, but pretty simple for me. I need to see anything from Arizona's offense before I can pick them to win another game. Just as simple as that for me. And I know they're at home and West Virginia's been struggling as well. I don't know. I don't really get Arizona being favored in this game. I know West Virginia has some injuries as well. Garrett Green, we don't know if he's going to be healthy enough to start for West Virginia. I'm not sure if it matters at the moment. Arizona's missing, like we talked about, several of its best players on defense, including Jacob Manu now, who's out for the year. Offensive line is in shambles. Noah Fafita isn't the same guy as he was last year. I mean, you can blame several different things on that, but both teams are at the bottom quarter of the conference in both total offense and defense. I think West Virginia's struggles are a bit more situational than systemic. So I'm going to take the Mountaineers. I'm sorry, Barrett, 28-13 West Virginia. I hope you're right and I'm wrong.
Yeah, listen, Barrett, I would love for you to be right here. Kind of shut up those haters, including us. I'll come on next week's show, Shane, and I'll come on and say, we were wrong.
But love it. Nothing more.
Everything that I've seen from the last two games in person, Texas Tech and Colorado, nothing shows me that Arizona can win, especially with the losses personnel. So, Barrett, thank you so much for coming on. You were passionate tonight, as always. Appreciate your honesty and being real. And you're a great representative, former player, and of what this team and university is all about. So, always glad to have you on. For Matt Muehlebach, Barrett Baker, Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.